Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Xner's Fireside Chats. I want to give you all a quick introduction to the series because I got a bunch of new graphics. This was all done by Superfly on Twitter, so go and give him a very nice shout out. He does great work, very cool. So, thank you for the art, obviously. But this is pretty much topics on whatever I find are interesting, so they can range from, whatever. Economic recovery is what we're going to talk about in North American Tier 2 Counter-Strike today with Stamina, and, we might have some other topics down the line, but basically I wanted to kind of transition out of just talking about, ESL Challenger stuff, ESEA Premier, all of that, and kind of move in towards a more broader idea. So with all that being said, I've got Stamina, the IGL of Strife. He's recently fresh off the back of a win in Philadelphia, Denver. Or I guess it's Frag Denver to be more accurate because it's not in Philly. But yeah, I mean, how you doing, Stamina? It's good to have you on the interview.
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Just overcoming COVID recently, so if I'm coughing a lot in this episode, bear with me. But yeah, I'm very excited to have you on. I wanted to start things off by talking about Strife just a little bit because we've got a very exciting new organization in North American Counter Strike, and that's partially why I wanted to have you on in particular. Is how are things going with Strife, and how are you feeling after that fresh win on LAN?
Yeah, I mean, Strife, they've been amazing so far since working with the management. Matt and Kevin and Alex are our three owners. They're
Hmm.
they're really nice. They're always there. Like you can always reach out to them. Any questions? They like to hang out every once in a while. Like I'll play some matchmaking with them every once in a while. We've done like Among Us as an organization,
Hmm.
little things like that to have fun. But they're honestly great guys. Kevin, Matt actually both came out to Denver with us,
Yeah.
just for the weekend. They weren't there for the whole time that we were there, but they came out for the weekend and they brought us to Brazilian barbecue one night. That was
Oh.
awesome. And then outside of that, they were just like a lot of fun at the house. Played some like card games, watched some Counter Strike stuff like that. So they're really good people. It's awesome to work with them, and I think the organization's headed in the right direction and yeah, big things. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
awesome.
That's incredible. Yeah. So I mean, I guess my first question is how did you all exactly find out about these people interested in investing in Counter-Strike?
Yeah, so funny enough, I mean, Matt is Joel's other older brother.
Okay.
There's about a 10-year age gap though. So he's big brother and
Mm.
he's a software developer who lives in, I believe, like Ottawa.
Hmm.
And so he actually works with the other two owners in the same company. And so that's kind of like our, I guess, parent company per se, not necessarily
Yeah.
like officially, but anyways, so they're basically three software developers, and really the two people that were the most pushing for this were Kevin and Matt. Kevin's just a huge esports fanatic. I mean, in our first interview ever, like talking with him, he had his camera on. He was super enthusiastic, and he's wearing like an Evil Genius's hat. So it's
Yeah.
just funny to see like he's just big into esports.
Hmm.
And then Matt obviously is huge into esports as well. I think he kind of got the foot in the door for Joel's when he was younger. I think he's probably why Joel started playing.
Hmm.
And so David had actually talked about how his brother and his friends wanted to make an org like a year ago, but when they were interested, they just didn't really know what to do. They didn't really have too much, you know, motivation to do it. They it sounded like a cool idea.
Yeah.
And then right around the time I joined the team and David joined the team, we were talking about like looking for an organization because Recon 5 had actually unfortunately fell under the owner of Recon 5. He had
Hmm.
some issues IRL, so the org kind of died just because he was the only person really running it. It wasn't really much of a organization in that sense.
Hmm.
Um, and nonetheless, we were talking with David and he was talking to his brother and it happened really quick. I'm talking like within 3 days there was a website. Within 3 days we had like basic graphics, not that they were great by any means,
Hmm.
talking about all the plans to get the organization going. So really it was kind of like a dream project for Matt and Kevin and Alex, and it kind of just came together really quickly. So we just got lucky. We got very, very lucky. And it's also one of those things where, a team like Party Astronauts or like Bad News Bears who have been without an organization, even if they would have known like David's older brother, we went out on a limb because like we have nothing to lose, but they're at a little bit higher of a level in terms of like placements and
Yeah.
making pro league and whatnot, to where it doesn't really make sense for teams at their caliber to like take this chance. So it was one of those ones where it could have been 1 month of fun and then go nowhere, like you see all the time happen with like basement orgs. But these guys were very legitimate and they had a really smart plan right off the rip. And I mean, they just hit the ground running, and they're incredibly smart. Like as soon as the community starts to know some of the finer things that are working behind the scenes, they'll really start to realize like how smart these guys are. They're super innovative. Um, and I'm like I said, they're software developers, so they've got big plans in terms of other avenues that we can take in the esports realm outside of just being an organization that sponsors a team. Like they can maybe create products for other organizations or ourselves. So it's just really cool. They're really great to work with, and I couldn't ask for a better first organization to sign with. It's actually been amazing. So
Yeah, no, I mean the one time that or I guess I've talked to them a couple of times, but the time that I've talked to them, I think they were looking for like a real long-term project, and I was excited that they chose you all because I have been a big fan of like Slight, Saturn, and obviously like the rest of your team. So I'm glad that you all got that opportunity for sure. So I guess I want to talk about what the expectations were from the org with your all's roster individually, because I'm sure there will with this org, they probably wanted certain things, and obviously you probably don't want to drop down into advanced with a fresh new org. That's never a good sign. That's where a lot of those basement orgs quickly do crumble. So, you obviously avoided that, but yeah, what are the expectations put on you from this organization?
So despite me having a very like public tweet about, I'm full-time Counter-Strike for the first time in my life, quit my job,
Mhm.
we actually weren't on our full-time salaries until December 1st. So
Okay.
everybody thinks that we've been like full-time for months now. What happened was right at the beginning of the organization, they really didn't have any ins in the scene, and I was actually taking on the responsibility of being full-time social media manager and graphic designer because I have a little bit of a background in that.
Hmm.
And so I was doing a lot of stuff for the organization. So early on, I got to quit my job and become full-time before my teammates. They were still getting paid, but like at a lower amount, like a ramp up amount. And so anyways, it was one of those things where it made it seem like we were all like grinding super hard, but unfortunately that actually wasn't the case. Like for the first few months, I was just doing a lot with the org, and then as of December 1st, we all signed, our official contracts, at our full-time amounts. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, early on, their initial mentality was we can't have any set goals or ideas of what we need you to do or accomplish because we're not actually giving you guys the resources to be, you know, above these other teams. Like,
Hmm.
if you're not getting paid more than RBG, if you're not financially supported more than like Party Astronauts or Bad News Bears, etc., then like we can't really expect you to just make that jump overnight. That's the whole point of giving a team like us this opportunity is so 6 months down the line, where are we? So early on, we didn't have any real expectations, and we kind of got blessed with playoffs last season
Yeah.
by luck of the draw. I mean, we were in a three-way tie that would have put us in playoffs, fifth place, or relegation,
Right.
and we got the fifth place spot, and then Payne dropped out, so we get playoffs. So we made the most of it. I mean, we took top four. We played very well.
Yeah.
I
You
think we were.
only
I
lost to
think
the
that
two
kind of
teams that were in the grand finals. So
exactly. I think we kind of put our name out there a little bit. And then this season, same exact situation. Three-way tie. One team goes fifth place. One team goes sixth place decider, and then the last team goes to relegation. And we got um the last spot, unfortunately. I think it was okay. I think it humbled us a little bit. I think we needed to realize that, we need to work a bit harder. It was also a bit unfortunate because we obviously had such a stacked group. Not that I like
yeah.
to make any excuses. We had a very winnable game in our Party Astronauts game in the last game of the season at boot camp, and if we won that game, we would have been fifth place guaranteed and technically tied with RBG. It would
Hmm.
have come to tiebreakers at head to head, but nonetheless, we were in a position to actually make playoffs. Granted, everything that happened, so you know, we just kind of fell short. and that's okay. We picked up Brett. He didn't know any of our system, and so now this season's really where it matters the most. We got to prove that, we're actually improving. But the one thing I was really proud about us for is like proving that we are just like a step above the other non-playoff teams. I think that's kind of a certainty at this point.
Hmm.
Not to sound like egotistical, but I think like we shouldn't have been in that tournament because, we should have performed better to other people's expectations and our own expectations. But when we were in that tournament, we showed that, we're still the best team there. So that was important to us.
No, you certainly did. It was a very good showing in the relegation tournament. I want to talk about it a little bit more in depth this season because, like you had mentioned, you were in an incredibly stacked group. Like, yeah, you
Yeah.
had you had the winner, the second place, and the third place. I believe RBG was
And
third
fourth place.
and fourth. All right,
Top
yeah,
four were
because
in the same group,
you
and
were
then we
fourth,
had
right?
ATK. We were fourth.
Yeah,
So we had top four in our group plus ATK and Team One coming back from Pro League.
yeah. So I mean,
So,
absolutely
uh,
absurdly stacked group,
yeah,
obviously. So I
yeah.
mean, you did
Not to
manage.
mention,
Oh,
I
go ahead.
mean, sorry to cut you
No,
off.
no, no, you're good.
Detonate didn't end up making it through relegation. Personally, they were my favorites to come through second.
Yeah, me
And
too.
so like I just feel like they were the better of most of the move ups. Like if you put Detonate in the other group, they weren't relegated in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh,
So
100%. Yeah, I
yeah.
definitely agree. They were the other team that I was like, man, like why does this team have to be in the group?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a bummer how it all panned out, but
Yeah.
despite that, you did kind of ease your way through the relegation tournament. Would you say that, maybe that boot camping that you all were doing and kind of gelling as a roster on land, like you'd mentioned Brett, he had been there for a little while, but I believe only since like mid-November that he had joined your roster. So
Yeah.
obviously there was work to do. So would you say that kind of attributed to some of your success was having the experience with him?
Oh, 100%. I think it's kind of funny. Detonate, when we were going to their best into the best of three with them,
Hmm.
I was like, these guys are 5-0 on Ancient. They play Ancient all the time. They're gonna pick Ancient versus us. And thank God we played Ancient at our boot camp because like it was our biggest gap in our map pool.
Hmm.
Um we were floating all 7 maps. We weren't afraid to play anything, but we knew that our Ancient was definitely abusable. So I was like, these guys are gonna pick Ancient.
Yeah.
And then I think they saw us prepping for it the day of and they chose to pick Inferno and we slaughtered them on Inferno. So I mean, honestly, that boot camp helped a lot, and we've gotten some crap from peers on what that boot camp was about. People thought we were boot camping for the Denver event. People thought we were boot camping for relegation.
Yeah.
Man, we went to that boot camp thinking we could win every game we were going to play that week. We
Hmm.
were boot camping to make playoffs
Yeah.
and then do well in playoffs. And there was no other thought process. We didn't even think we'd be in relegation. When I woke up that morning, I actually messaged the admins. I thought the tiebreaker was done wrong again.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it was solely to get better. That's all that boot camp was for, and it was kind of like our organization was like, okay, we're going to Denver Land. They have a nice venue. To get the Airbnb for 3 extra days isn't that much expensive, that
Hmm.
much more expensive. Let's just make it a boot camp. We were like, cool, okay, we're gonna do that. So we did 10-hour days for 5 days straight. I mean, it was just practice,
Right.
and I think we showed going into like party astronauts. I mean, we beat them on overpass like 16-7, and they had the highest win rate on overpass in North America, and we had probably the lowest.
Yeah.
So, we definitely improved in that time frame, but just weren't able to get the job done. So,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I mean, I was impressed that you guys were even boot camping. I obviously saw some massive improvement. Like you'd mentioned, I said this on broadcast during the Frag Denver thing, but I was like, I'm sure Strife's goal is to come into this event, not drop a map. So I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting the boot camp for that event at all. I was more so
Yeah.
expecting you all in terms of just again like your organization, your managers had said is that this team is a long-term project. One thing I wanted to talk about in particular was some of the qualifiers that you all have played over the time that you've been an organization. You played plenty of online qualifiers, the IM Fall, plenty of just Counter Strike, obviously with all of the ESL stuff that they've got going on. So
Hmm.
I want to talk about the pressure that puts on you as a team. Obviously there's a lot of Counter Strike to be played. I think that's a good thing, and it can also be a bad thing. But you've had limited success in those qualifiers. I feel like that IEM Fall was a bit of a crushing one with obviously Godsent and Triumph. I think were who you dropped it to, but
Yeah.
what sort of pressure does that put on you all as a team, and that amount of Counter Strike? What does that kind of do uh, for North American Counter Strike, and I guess you all individually as well?
Yeah, so personally, those types of qualifiers, honestly, I love. I live for those. Those are like my favorite. I think the problem with those qualifiers is in North America, there's like this weird mentality that a lot of people have where people in NA don't think that they can actually make the major. They don't think that they can actually make DreamHack. Like
Hmm.
they only think it's gonna go to Extra Salt or Liquid or EG. Like they never think that they can actually make it. So in Europe, you've got guys like Mad Lions and they're like, okay, we can make this.
Yeah.
That you've got guys like Ents, they're like, okay, we can take second,
Copenhagen
at the RMR.
Flames, or
Copenhagen
yeah.
Flames, right? But NA people don't think they can. And so what I think is kind of interesting about that is when you look at these qualifiers, I actually think a lot of teams perform better than they should. And you could
Hmm.
say that we do as well. You could really make the same argument for why we play decent in these qualifiers. But with that being said, you know, I actually think these qualifiers are hard. Like
Yeah.
I don't think they're like it's always a breeze to make second day for us because we kind of play a little bit more disciplined Counter-Strike than some other premier teams might.
Mm.
But like actually making the events kind of hard sometimes. Like they end up being pretty stacked, and I think like so many teams have no pressure on them because the only thing people actually care about in NA is making Pro League for the most part.
Hmm.
So Premier is where people get pressured and like nervous and scared, and that's why like we can go out and we can lose to like I think we lost to Eros in one of these closed qualifiers or something,
Hmm.
and then. I don't think those guys would take a map off us if we played seven straight in Premier. And that's
Right.
honestly just how I feel about those qualifiers. So we played the IM Fall North America Open Qualifier 1, and we 2-0'd ATK to make the closed. And then when we made the close, we lost to Triumph, which was a very unfortunate series because Jules had to go to the hospital with
Yeah.
some chest pains and he had like an EKG done, all this crazy stuff. Not to mention, we got Godson as our first round match, and
Yeah. This.
they were ready to go.
Mhm.
So we fell short in that, and then we played the I by Power Mythic Masters Open Qualifier, and that was an event we really wanted to make, and we breezed through the all the way to the end, and ATK 2-0'd us. So like we literally went from the week prior we 2-0'd ATK to ATK coming in 2-0ing us, and they might take it as like, oh, they improved drastically in that time frame, and I think it's more so like North American Counter-Strike to a T. Like they just played better that day. It wasn't like they were necessarily the better team,
Mhm.
and that's what's so tough about those qualifiers is like we 2-0'd them 16-5ing them on Nuke, and then they played us again on Nuke, and they 16-11'd us, and they're 2-0. So it's just like, where's the consistency there? That's kind of what we're fighting for in NA as like a middle of the pack premier team. We're trying to fight for that consistency to be that guy that like, okay, we don't lose to any of these guys. We only lose to the better teams. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what's tough about those qualifiers. They don't put a lot of pressure on me. I mean, if you look at my career, actually, in my entire history, I was never able to play these events because in high school I was playing like sports and I'd have tournaments on the weekends. And then also, I've played on so many teams where my teammates literally practiced Sunday through Thursday. They were never available Fridays and Saturdays. I've never been a quality grinder myself. So
Mhm.
honestly, it's fun. For me, it's fun. I don't have a lot of pressure. We want to make one of these events and make the closed qualifiers and make the main events, but I don't think it's more pressure than Premier still at this point for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, with that being said, what do you think's going to take you to that next level? What do you think you can get in future seasons? Obviously you've been boot camping, but what are you looking forward to in terms of improving as a roster, and how do you think you can get there?
Well, I think uh, our new coach is going to help a lot. As was announced, we've signed Crisby as our new coach. He's a ex professional for Unicorns of Love and Penta and a bunch of other German teams. He's on Mousesports at one time.
Mm.
And I think his experience, I mean, he started playing in 2005. I think his experience as an in-game leader and with European Counter-Strike, especially in the German scene where they're super tactical,
Yeah.
is going to really help us. Him and I actually just talked briefly about some of our maps and some of our strategies, kind of just getting him to understand like how we play. And I remember just like going over a couple strats, and he was like, "Well, what if you just added this Molotov and this one flash and did everything the exact same way?" And then we dry run it with just that one Molotov and that one flash, and we're like, "Wow, it's like infinitely better," but it's
Yeah.
like a gap that we didn't think about. And I just think there's like little intricacies that he can be like, in your default, you have this major gap. Here's how you can, not be exploited. And so, I just think that that's going to help us a lot. I don't think that's going to push us over the bridge because we still have to go out there and perform. But
Mm-hmm.
I think what's really going to push us over is Brett is also joining us full time. As many people might not have known, he was actually on trial for the past month. He wasn't a full player just because we need to pick somebody up quick, but we're
Mm-hmm.
also signing year-long contracts, and we need to make sure that like this person that we pick up is really worth it for the long run. So,
Yeah.
through everything, we decided that Brett was definitely going to help us. So I think now that we have a set five and an off season, I think that's really gonna be what helps us get over um that edge, because our map pool has probably been our biggest issue. It's like we go into a nuke against like a lower level team and we slaughter them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we play like Party Astronauts or Extra Salt and they slaughter us. And the inconsistency there is really weird. But then another map like Mirage, which has always been strong for us, we can literally beat anybody on. Like anybody. So I think, and you take that as like puggy. I think it's actually just our play style. Like I think we play a very European style. I love watching teams like Gambit and OG and Virtus Pro, and they're all really good on Mirage. So
Mm-hmm.
um I think really what we need is we need to work more with our coach and have a set five that can, practice and whatnot. So I think that's really what's gonna help push us over the edge the most. So
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I mean, another map that I've seen you all massively improve on is Overpass. So,
yeah,
very very cool. I'm excited about that new coach. That's going to be a great addition. Um, so I mean, next season you guys have season 40 of Challengers League, and I kind of want to segue this as well into potential.
sorry, I just want to turn on
No,
the light.
no, you're
It got
good.
dark.
No worries. I wanted to segue this into like potentially talking about the more ecosystem questions.
Sure.
But you got Challengers League next. You were able to make it through the relegation tournament with ease, like you had mentioned. What are your expectations for next season with all of this being a case? What are you expecting out of your team?
Playoffs is a must. I think like if we don't make playoffs, that's disappointing. And I think that we should absolutely by all means like avoid relegation at the bare minimum. Like even just playing in the tournament. Um that's really like the biggest goal right away is like go back to playoffs. And then I think from there, I think the door is wide open, right? Because I don't know how exactly the season's going to work. I don't know if you have any more information than I do. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't think Party Astronauts can play. I like
I
because they're
I
going to
I
be at
think you're
Pro
right.
League.
Yeah.
Like they're like physically at Pro League during
Hmm.
like the bulk of the season. Like I don't know if they can actually play. And then also, I don't know if Extra Salt will play.
Right.
And then you got to think their core rumored to go to Complexity. Complexity is an ESL partner. They won't be in Premier anymore. None of those players are going to be in Premier.
Correct.
And Pain Gaming is losing Safe. Malbs is rumored to be out of Team One. I've never seen a bigger door.
Opportunity.
So, I think the opportunity is there for us to really push the edge. And I don't know if I'm allowed to be saying this. I mean, I didn't get this. I'm not gonna say who rumored this to me, but apparently this season is supposed to have 2 EPL conference slots. So like first and second place would both go to conference. Apparently that's actually supposed to how it's gonna work like in the future. Like every couple seasons we'll have 2 slots and then the other one will have one kind of
Hmm.
thing. So like we're supposed to get like more opportunity even though it's conference.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know. I think there's a huge opportunity. Who knows what Bad News Bears is gonna do? Like there's rumors that like I don't know. I don't even know if they're rumors. I just see people saying on Twitter like minus to Bad News Bears. I don't know why he would do that. He's salaried and
Yeah.
on like a team that's in a team house. I don't know. So like really, we're looking at Triumph lost CXCI. I don't know who is really going to be, this major challenge for anybody. And even like Party Astronauts, I don't know. And obviously RBG will still be there and they're a good team. I think like Party Astronauts, I don't know what it is about their play style and their approach to the game, but like we're figuring them out more and more and getting
Hmm.
more and more comfortable against like those guys. So like they're a team that we've taken a map off them every time we played them in recent time, and RBG's been 2-0'd by them like 8 times in a row. So like, I mean, we're kind of bridging the gap between those types of teams right now, and I don't really know, but like our bare minimum goal is playoffs. Like that's really
Mhm.
what we want out of this season. But we kind of have like a 6 month plan with Crisby. By that 6 month point, we want to be in Europe.
Okay.
So that's really the goal.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome. I think there's a lot of opportunities, like you had said. I don't have any more information than you do, other than like rumors of stuff. But I know that.
like I said, I could be wrong on the two spot
Mhm.
thing, but like I'm pretty sure that might be the case.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not on Liquipedia or HLTV yet, but I think it's because it's not announced.
right.
But
I mean, it very well could be because if you think about 2 seasons prior as opposed to this season, number one and number two, I think Extra Salt and RBG went to
yep,
Europe. So yeah, I think you might be right there for sure. But yeah, I want to move into ecosystem questions now. We covered a
sure,
lot about Strife, and so yeah, I want to start off with talking about some of your ideas. Again, I wanted to get you in particular because I've seen you brainstorming quite a bit on Twitter. A lot of your opinions, I think, are spot on in terms of what North America needs. So
sure,
I guess we can talk about the leagues idea that you had talked about. You talked about kind of an academy league system in North America in tier two and the necessity for competition for ESEA. Um, I want to talk about why you think that's important, and I kind of want to counter that with why it could be potentially hard from personal experience.
sure. So actually, I didn't mean for it to be an academy league. I meant for it to actually be
Just a
like
competitive league for ESEA.
exactly.
Okay.
So one thing that we've noticed in the past in recent time is that like North American teams like Liquid, EG, etc., the big dogs, they're spending like 90% of the year in Europe, and I mean 90% of the CS:GO calendar. Obviously, they're still in the US for like probably half the year, but like the CS calendar is like 90% Europe, and obviously a lot of that was because of COVID. COVID doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon, but it seems like the world is starting to live with COVID a little bit differently
Yeah.
and be more accepting of the idea of like, okay, life will still go on.
Right.
We're just gonna have these restrictions. And I think that one of the best things that we could do to kind of rebuild the North American scene is to actually have some sort of merger league with like South American teams and North American teams. And why I think it would actually be really good is because South Americans can consistently get to Mexico right now.
Hmm.
And if you wanted to host an online league still, like if they're in Mexico, I mean they get like 40 ping to Chicago, they get like 20 to Dallas, right? So that's a thing. But if we can get them to the States based on I mean like I just saw something on Twitter, like literally today that the CDC changed isolation time frame from 10 days to 5 days now. So like things are loosening up, and if you can get them to the states, you could do lands of South American players like really easily,
Hmm.
and their scene has drastically improved. Like I would actually argue that South America is probably stronger than North America outside of the top dogs just because like Liquid and current Extra Salt and current or previous EG, we're still probably better than everybody in South America outside of Furia,
Hmm.
but like their tier two scene is like incredible right now. Like they've got so many teams that can beat each other. Um,
Yeah. So many
so I think
players.
yeah, and Gamers Club just created like North America Gamers Club NA. They like that came out like a few months back. They haven't really
Hmm.
done anything crazy. But when that first got announced, I actually made this tweet about the idea, and a couple people from Gamers Club actually DM'd me and were like, "Hey, what do you think we could do?" And I said I actually pitched this idea to them. My idea was like you take say like 10 teams in North America and like 10 teams in South America, and you do it based on some world ranking, that's fair.
Hmm.
And maybe you have open qualifiers or whatever, and you create this like pro circuit where like the top 4 from each region go to this LAN and NA, right? And then the step off of it that I thought would be really smart is if they invited like 4 of the best European teams that were willing to come.
Hmm.
So then you have consistent South American, North American, European talent competing against each other. Because one of the biggest reasons why there's like a gap between North and South America and Europe is because we just don't get to play against them.
Hmm.
Like I I
Especially in
may
that tier
sound
two region.
exactly, and I might sound like an optimistic, delusional type of person, but like I really do think that like the gap is much smaller than people think.
Yeah.
It's more so like mentality and experience because we see Extra Salt go over to EPL conference and they just like they walked their EPL conference, honestly. Like they didn't really look like they were pressured too much. and some of those teams are pretty good. Like
Yeah,
Sprout was a
very
pretty
good.
good team. We
Yeah,
see Favin go to big. So I just think like a league like that where you're taking Brazilian viewership, North American sponsors, you're taking
European
talented players
viewership
from
as
both
well.
regions, bringing in Europeans. I think it's a really smart idea. And if you can find a way to have that league happen without stepping on the toes of other big TOs, I think it could be possible. And I think Gamers Club is a huge organization that could make it happen. So
Okay,
that was
no,
kind of my idea. That was my idea of what we could do to kind of help the ecosystem a little bit better. I mean, maybe there's a lot of logistic that I don't think about, but nonetheless, I just thought it was like a cool idea on paper.
no, I love that idea on paper, like you had said. Obviously, you mentioned a caveat. There's like stepping on Tio's toes. I think that's obviously a really hard thing to do in this environment, like we had said. I think that's again like for better or for worse, like it is somewhat of a good thing because I know that at this time last year it was around the time that Chaos had left. Obviously, like a little bit, a lot of teams were losing funding. I think the Whalers had kind of fallen off as well this time last year, and so at this time we were kind of talking about what we needed to do to recover from the situation in Tier 2 Counter Strike. And, we came up with a lot of ideas, but I think the biggest one was that we just needed more tournaments and we needed more team play, more opportunities for teams
Yeah,
to get together. That's kind of like a brainstorming of what you had just said. But we have entered into a time period where we do have that. I think this year alone, we have the Extra Salt, Bad News Bears, and Party Astronauts. Those three teams have won nearly 500,000. I think they're around like $400,000 in prize pools.
yeah.
So that's a pretty good year for a tier two teams. Obviously, that's three combined, and an extra sort of one a large majority of that. But um, yeah, I mean, what do you think about the current position that we are compared to like say last year?
I think we are like leaps and bounds above. I actually think that's one of the interesting things about Premier is a lot of players in Premier, they're gonna have like egos aside, they're gonna be able to realize like the division's a lot closer than people want to give you credit. I mean, we literally watched RBG beat Pain Gaming in playoffs, and I didn't think they were good enough to do that. Like
Ah,
just from like my own like my ego, like I didn't think RBG could beat Pain. Like I think Pain's like a step above,
yeah.
but RBG clearly is good enough to do that. I think a lot of people didn't think like my team even could make games as close as we did. Like I think last season in playoffs we like 2-0 triumph and it was like handed. Like
Yeah.
I think it was
Yeah.
like 16-5, 16-7. People were like, "Huh?" But it it was a thing. I think Choco Check made the finals, and granted you can say whatever you want about Choco Check, but like the talent level in North America has never been the question. It's really just been about seeing that talent kind of like develop. And I think
Hmm.
something we've been seeing a lot this year is because of some of the Brazilian teams coming over, because of the opportunities that have been given to us by ESL, we've seen the most North American based, okay, I'm saying that just because some Brazilian teams just live here, the most North American based teams in Europe that I think we've seen in recent time. Like we had Team One, okay, we had Team One, we had Pain, we had Bad News Bears. We had Extra Salt. We had RBG. Party Astronauts has a spot booked, but they don't
Hmm.
get to go until the new year. Who am I missing? Feel like I'm missing a team. I mean like Godsent.
Godson.
I mean
Yeah.
honestly, when Godsent first came here, horrible,
Losing to Bad News
horrible.
Bears every cash
They
cup.
were
Yeah.
terrible, and then they made the major. So like we have a lot of teams that are like NA based. Granted, they're Brazilian, they're not North American, whatever.
Hmm.
But like we consider those guys North American teams at this point, and we had the most NA based teams go to Europe this year from the tier two scene that I think we've seen in probably ever.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at
And
Godson right now, they
like
just made their way through the conference. On top of that,
yeah,
they took down big and heroic over in Europe with IEM Winter. So
yeah,
they had to beat Extra Salt. They had to beat Fury, I believe, to even qualify for that event. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we're in a really good spot. I will say one thing that I really hate about our current system, and this is no hate to our Brazilian brothers. I just hate the fact that we do have to fight with Brazilian teams for major slots. I really think that sucks.
Hmm.
Like Extra Salt really deserved after the year that they had to go to the major, and it was kind of unfortunate to see that spot taken by a Brazilian team when Brazil should just have more slots. They should have more slots and just qualify from Brazil. Like honestly, like I think there should be like a rule, like if you're here for X amount of time or something like that, you kind of become integrated. But also, I mean, it was completely bullshit that Extremum was even in that qualifier.
Yeah.
Extremum spent 0 days in NA of the entire year, and they come here to qualify. Like that kind of shit's stupid. And if we remove that and we create a better system for that, I think that'll be even better for our ecosystem, really. And again, I don't have any hate against like Brazilians coming here and like getting better and helping us get better. I just think it sucks that like, it's a like I can't go fly to Brazil and just crush their qualifier. Like I don't think I can just do that. I mean, maybe I can, but like I mean, if that was really the case, we should have had Strife fly us out to Australia and we'll just steal their spot every season because I can promise you that it would happen like within 6 months' time if a good North American team wanted to do that. So I just think that's kind of silly, right? That's kind of my biggest complaint
Hmm.
about our whole ecosystem right now is that North American teams should benefit from North American qualifiers and major spots and whatnot. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was a big problem with the RMR. I think the whole system was beyond
yeah.
repair at this point with like how they did the tiebreakers and stuff. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, those were headache. Oh my God.
That whole system needs to be chopped up and reworked. That's for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
the RMR was not even like it was an individual's TO's fault. I imagine that they had to do that per Valve. I don't know why Valve
Yeah,
would
I
really
assume it was
implement like a
Valve.
brand new tiebreaker into a major qualifier that we haven't had in 2 years. Either way, it was a disaster. I think how they ran the RMRs this entire year,
Yeah.
and then obviously like the post major what went on with all of the dead teams as well. So
Oh yeah.
I think another thing is that like the major should end the year or at least like lead us into the off season is something people have been
I agree.
talking about. Um, but yeah, I mean, so I guess like to talk a little bit about more of the NA stuff in particular. What do you think kind of has led to that success? Do you think it was kind of those cash cups that have been introduced, the more focus on team play, the open qualifiers that teams have had to play with? What do you think has been a big contributor?
Well, I think that cash cups play a huge part. I think I did the math at one point, and for like a 7 month span, this was actually when John G was still on Bad News Bears, but I
Hmm.
went to their Liquipedia and I did the math. I included coach for one statistic, and then I took the coach out for another just to see the money. Their prize breakdown from prize pool from NA tournaments for a 7 month span had them making 2K a month per player.
Yeah, I mean
Like
that's plenty
like
for
that's livable wage,
yeah,
right? Like it literally made some of these teams be able to say like, okay, it's fair for us to practice X amount of time per day because we don't need to go get a part-time job. I also think that despite all these big names leaving CS, I think it helped some smaller names when it came to Twitch streams. Like Ponalone's been popping off this
yeah,
year. Swisher, MOTM stream is pretty big. I mean, like Junior obviously had the Brazilian boost, but like we had a lot of NA players who were getting like way bigger on Twitch financially. That's gotta help.
yeah.
Um, so I think Cash Cups helped a ton, and I think like Mythics Cups helped a lot as well.
Right. Well, I mean,
I
yeah,
think
like all of the frag stuff as well that's been introduced.
yeah,
Yeah, I
I will
mean,
say I will say it also helps like a lot of advanced teams too, and I think that kind of goes unspoken, and it kind of makes the region better overall because when I was first starting to get into advanced like 3 years ago, like when I was in main and advanced or whatever,
mhm.
I can tell you I quite literally never played premier teams and officials because the only tournaments we had were like DreamHack Open qualifier, Major qualifier, IEM qualifier. Now we have two cash cups a month. Plus, I mean, like, I don't know if I can get in trouble for saying this. I'm just gonna say it, whatever. We got invited to another Super League 10K. Those guys are hosting monthly 10Ks.
Wow.
You have Mythic hosting their cups. There's like a ton of tournaments right now, and we've never had so many opportunities to play better opponents outside of our actual league. So when you look at it from a competitor standpoint, if you go into Premier and you have 16 matches, we're talking old format, and you play every team just one time, um, then you get one time to ever show that you're better than them or whatnot. But if you have Premier system where you play all BO3s, separate groups, you're playing cash cups against those same Premier teams if you're making second day, and you're now talking about playing, in a 4-month period, you'd usually only play a certain premier team like one time in the old system when there was 3 seasons a year. One wasn't a move up, and it was just like BO1s or just one singular BO3. And now you're playing like multiple BO3s against the same team. Multiple like I want to look at the number. It's actually absurd. RBG and Party Astronauts, they have this weird like uh hate for each other. I don't really know where
Yeah,
it stems from,
I,
but
I
these
saw on
guys have
Twitter.
actually played each other like a stupid amount of times, and I thought it was like crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is like what time frame this is. I don't know if this is all time, all head to heads. Okay, so since 2020, the Party Astronauts core of Ben, Lee, DJ, and Pone. I think that's the trio that's technically been there the
Mhm.
whole time. Their core has played RBG in 27 officials. So, I mean, in 2021, you can take out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Take out 6 of those. In just 2021, they played 20 officials against each other. And like almost every single one was a BO3.
Yeah. I mean,
In the old system, you would only ever play a team like maybe like 10 times in a year. Unless you were like EG and Liquid who go back and forth in every final. But like for the most part, teams weren't playing each other that much. Like you're playing each other that much, you're learning that much more about your opponents. I think it helped. And also, the one underrated aspect is as horrible as FPL's been in recent time. The fact that we are now like the old guard of FPL is crazy because now I can go queue a night of FPL and play Infinite on Nuke, and every single game on Nuke, Infinite's playing ramp, and I can see every single way that he plays ramp in 5 FPL games.
mhm.
And when I play him in my BO3 the next day, nothing's gonna change. And that's kind of the big kicker for NA. Like we've bridged the gap between, tier 3, tier 4, whatever numbers you want to put on it, in the top, like tremendously. Like
Yeah.
teams are beating other teams at a crazy number, and we've just never seen this before. And it's, in my opinion, it's all because of these tournaments. You know, so there was a time where like Party Astronauts just did not win against any of the other top teams like Extra Salt or
Mhm.
Team One or Bad News Bears. Like they didn't win against those guys ever back in the day. Like they just ever, like they would just always lose, and now they're like consistently beating these guys and going on win streaks against these guys. So
Yeah.
it's helping everybody, honestly.
Yeah. No,
So
I'm right there with you. And I mean, you had mentioned the amount of head to head that, say, RBG and Party Astronauts have
right.
played. You have right now in the last 6 months, if you go to like HLTV's top officials, you have North American teams. I believe there's 5 or 6 in the top 20, nearly. So that alone, like the amount of games that they've just played in like
Oh, you're
official
talking about just like
matches.
matches played for teams?
Yeah, yeah, they've got
Oh wow.
Party Astronauts is 5th, Extra Salt is
Extra
6th.
salt's two. No,
Yeah.
extra salt's two in the last 3 months. Are you looking at the?
Oh, I'm looking at 6 months, even
Oh,
like
sorry.
more
Okay,
results.
okay.
But yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
it's even better. It's like Extra Salt in the last 3 months.
Sure.
And Triumph is up there. RBG is up there. I think Bad News Bears is 21st. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of North American teams that are just getting so much Counter Strike and so much experience. So,
It's
yeah,
crazy you say that. I looked on the list and like my team has played more officials in the last 6 months than uh I guess that doesn't really count. Actually, never mind. I thought I saw some big names and I was like, okay, their teams are kind of dead. But
hmm
nonetheless, we've played the same amount of officials as some teams that are like
yeah,
much higher level than us, and I think that helps a lot, right? Like a ton. So
yeah,
yeah, and that was something too. Like I think if I look at my HLTV real quick, and granted, my career kind of, you know, all just kind of happened in recent times,
right,
but all of my HLTV officials I've ever played in my career started in 2018. Like 2018 was my first official, but from 2018 until my time on Choco Check, I think it was like 25 maps on HLTV total and 15 were from a Philadelphia.
yeah,
So like I'm saying, like you just don't get these opportunities to play like that many officials, and scrims only help so much, right? So
hmm
yeah, I think the tournaments have been a huge success for NA.
yeah. I mean, on top of that, I guess we have to talk about it. Do you think it's a little bit too much to have 4 seasons a year? I know that in the early days we were talking about this, and I think a lot of people were excited. I think that ESEA has had a pretty hard time with this aspect. Obviously, like trying to deal with player breaks and stuff like that. I think now this is the second time that they've really struggled to, nail down dates. And whenever problems occur, it doesn't leave them any wiggle room to work with. And I think that's a big problem. On top of that, they have cash cups to compete with, and I think that on an individual, since we had some issues with the one frag times cash cup like online event that was ran, with a lot of teams having to play their premier matches with no option to reschedule because of that time crunch that they had. So, do you want to talk a little bit about is it 4 seasons potentially too much, or do you think there's a way to work around that potentially?
So I think that it's kind of like you can go either route, okay? I think that 4 seasons a year and the massive amount of officials in recent time is literally what is making us better as a region.
Hmm.
Okay. So I think in one sense it's important that we play so many. Okay. At the same time, it's hurting the like the lower level of our region, like advanced teams and main teams, far more than it's hurting anybody in Premier.
Hmm.
With that being said, we just saw finals of Premier forfeit. Like that's crazy. Doesn't even matter if you want to like hate on Chocolate Check, if you want to be one of the Chocolate Check haters, like it's fair. It's granted at this point, but at the same time, it wasn't even entirely their fault. They wanted to play the next day, and ESL wouldn't let them. Like that kind of stuff is stupid. And I also think that one thing is ESL kind of screws themselves because they buy out like I don't think people realize this as much, even though it's like public knowledge. But like ESL owns DreamHack, ESL owns IEM, ESL, like all of these. This is all ESL. Cash Cups are ESL, right?
Hmm.
ESCA is ESL. Okay, so it's not like they're competing with other TOs because if they were, they'd be like, oh, okay, like pick,
Right.
right? But then when they're like, oh, well, we have a Cash Cup this weekend, so we can't play. That's bullshit. I should be able to pick. Like honestly, like if I want to play my match instead of playing a Cash Cup, I should be able to pick. And I think that's the problem is because they own every aspect of the tournaments in North America, they don't want to pick. They want you to play everything because they want the viewership, they want the activity, and that's fair. It
Hmm.
makes sense. But that's what hurts us. So if you're gonna do 4 months a year, we need to be very, very smart about how we schedule everything. And I also think like I don't really know if I'm just like a noob when it comes to being a higher level CS player now, but like I didn't know official dates of the player break. I did not know. I don't know if I can like check the
Yeah, I
CSPA
think it's on the
player website or
CSPPA
something,
somewhere.
but like I didn't know the official dates. And so I tried to find it actually. Like I looked in oh when is tournament break? Oh, I found it actually.
Yeah.
So I just found it. But anyways, I didn't know when these were, right? And
Hmm.
so it's problematic when like I don't account for these. Like actually I'm going to Hawaii in February and my teammates and my coach are all kind of like, "Come on, man." But I'm like, "Okay, this will be the last time because I haven't adjusted yet to being a pro in that sense."
Yeah.
And like I used to just schedule vacations whenever I wanted, and now really I have 2 months of the year that I can vacation.
Yeah.
Anytime else, I'm a liability to my team. I'm being paid to play this game full time, so I have to be there full time.
Right.
So I think that's what's tough because like I just didn't know. So I
Hmm.
think moving forward, I have to be smarter. Players need to take more responsibility. Organizations need to take more responsibility over their players. But I think in North America, because you lack organizations and you lack that structure, now it's like unfair to ask this of players. I've
Hmm.
seen people being like, Premier should pay the players, blah, 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 give them like a stipend for the season. It's not a horrible idea, but I used to follow a game called Paladins, similar to like Overwatch. Their game did that. It killed the game. So, not that ESL would die from that, but like I just think like it's not necessarily some system that would be perfect. I think the issue is with 4 seasons a year, they need to make it consistent opportunity for teams. Like if it's 2 slots to EPL conference every season, that's cool. But if you have 2 seasons where it's two and 2 seasons where it's one, just make it 3 seasons where there's two. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? There's only 3 Pro League seasons a year. Did you know that? There's not four Pro League
There's
seasons
two.
in a year. Or there's two. Yeah, there's two. So like you could literally just be like, okay, here's 6 spots split across 2 seasons,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean? Like I
Or give
I
it
think
one season, maybe hand it over to other events, possibly.
right. personally, I think 3 seasons a year is best, with just every season giving spots.
Mhm.
And how you schedule that is kind of the big thing, because you need one pro league season to be. I think what they try to do is like they want one pro league season to cover 2 premier, one pro league to cover 2 more of premier,
Mhm.
and so it's like hard to have two cover 3 seasons. Like I can understand that. Um, and a season where there's no move ups is pointless. Like that's a big
Yeah,
argument too.
the
So
practice
maybe
season
what
is a
they can
big
do,
problem.
is one season can just be like the middle season where it doesn't get you to pro league, but like there's 2 spots directly to like IEM Katowice or something, like something that pays off. Because like I don't think anybody would have a sob story if they were going to a Katowice play-in versus pro league play-in, and I
Mhm.
actually don't think there's any. I mean, it might be more prestigious to go to Katowice play-in.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, like that's something they can maybe like look into, instead like make one season not a pro league move up season, because I mean they're all one company now, right? Like I don't see why that couldn't be a
Right.
thing. But personally, yeah, I think 3 seasons a year is best for the entire region, because it's gonna make scheduling easier for the lower level teams, and then for premier teams that are not paid to play the game, it's gonna make them have like no excuses, in my opinion, because at that point, um, if you can't schedule around those time frames. And also, I don't know if you know this, but this season of Premier coming up is going to be 30 days longer than the last two.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I can actually send you something real quick. There's like an ESL calendar
Mhm.
for 2022 that's official, and you can literally see that this season of Premier goes from January 18th until April 3rd. That's so long, dude.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's very long, and again, it kind of
You
brings
can
up the
you can
question
literally see
of
in the graphic, like the black border on the back is longer than the other three, like significantly.
yeah, it's a bit odd.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think potentially it has something to do with kind of to squeeze things in and try and make things work with Pro League. I think that's always
Right.
what it comes down to with
Yeah.
Challengers League. But yeah, it's a really tricky position to be in, like you said. Whether or not it's more beneficial to keep running these tournaments and have that time pressure be of essence. I think that potentially just shortening seasons down a little bit more, having less games, and I think that's what they're trying to do with how many teams went to the relegation tournament and how many teams got auto relegated this season. Was trying to shorten down the season, make things a little bit more digestible. But then that comes with issues of teams like wanting to play full 16 game seasons as opposed to, say, like, I think they try to do 10 game seasons, which I think that's far too short. I think maybe like 12 or 14 is the perfect balance to try and sneak in
Yeah.
4 seasons a year. But again, that's all for ESL to figure out, and I
Sure.
just wanted to
Yeah.
get your thoughts on that.
I think the one other thing I wanted to mention about that I think is kind of important, is at the lower level, a lot of kids can't forfeit more than like 2 guaranteed days a week, because like I can remember my time, like, I
Mhm.
had part-time jobs, I had
Right.
sports, I had whatever. Like if you know that your officials are Sunday and Wednesday, like default days,
Yeah.
people hate default forcers, but they're there for a reason. And like you can do that, but in Premier they don't allow forfeits, like unless the other team is just being like shitheads. So like when
Yeah.
you see forfeits in Premier, they tried everything they could. And I also think it's rough too, because you see teams go to Europe for like a month straight. How is that my fault that Extra Salt can't play? I don't know if you know this, but like
Yeah.
the season that I played on Chocolate Check, we ended up with the number 1 seed because we got a forfeit win over Extra
Yeah.
Salt, because they were in Europe
In
and we
Europe. Yeah.
literally could not play the one day that they were able to play. And it wasn't us being scummy, we just couldn't play that one day. They gave us one day because they're there for a month. It's not our problem,
Yeah.
you know?
And
Like
I'm
so
sure it was a ESL event that they were at as well.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tricky position to be in for sure. And like you mentioned, the expectation, like we talked about. I guess we haven't talked about it too much. I don't want to even dive into that. But Choco Check, obviously they're not a professional team. They don't get salaried, but on top of that, they have to play on this one day. It's the only day that they can play. Otherwise, they're eating at the extra salts player break, and that's a whole problem there.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean that expectation gets even less there when you're in advance, when you're in main. So, yeah, that's definitely a problem here. I want to talk about the contenders. I believe it's ESL contenders is is how you kind of make it into Pro League. And I want to talk about the potential for, like you had said, that the goal of Europe becoming more of a feasible prospect for players in North America. I think that's kind of something that everyone wants to get done, make it into Europe, get your boot camps. I think RBG has just recently, for the first time, accomplished that goal. That's 5 new North American players that have gotten an opportunity to scrim against, like, I believe they got some scrims against Navi, some top level opponents. I mean, it doesn't get any better than Navi, obviously. That's the
Right.
peak. Once you get to scrim them, imagine what Simple and Bit can do to break down your defaults. Once you get to kind of fill in those gaps, maybe that helps them out in taking down pain later on when they play Premier playoffs. But
Right.
I want to talk about the opportunity to move into Europe and get chances to play over there, because that's something that ESL has introduced with the Challengers League, or Contenders League. My apologies. Um,
What is
so
Contenders?
so it's the event that Extra Salt was able to qualify for. That the like
Oh, conference?
conference. Yes, that's what it is. Thank
Oh,
you.
okay. Sorry, I
Thank
wasn't
you.
trying
No,
to
no,
be.
no, no, no.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah.
You helped out big time right there. Conference is correct. Yeah. I mean, what do you think about like the conference being a thing added to the circuit? Do you think that's a good addition? Because I'm personally very excited for it being like an opportunity to, like you had said, get that gap in between Europe and North America, and make it more closer.
Well, initially, I thought it was horrible right away.
Yeah.
And the reason was I was like, they're taking our one thing that we've ever had, and that was a direct spot to Pro League. Okay.
Yeah.
But then I really started to break it down and like think about all the teams that have went there in recent times. And I'm like, when we go directly to Pro League, we get fucking slaughtered. Like, and I actually think that going to conference is what will help people, like fans. Not that fans are really like their opinions don't really matter to like
Mm-hmm.
pros or whatever, but like it's what's gonna make people realize like, oh, the gap between NA and EU is not that big. It's
Right.
just like EU basically has 10 tier 1 and NA has 1 tier 1.
Yeah.
Like that's really the difference. But like the middle teams, they're not that much better. So that's cool. I think that's and that boosts our confidence, right? Like if you see Extra Salt go to Europe and they're just like dogging people that you watch demos of, you're like, "Wait,
Yeah.
these guys aren't that much better." Like I play Extra Salt and I'm not shivering in my boots like to play
Right.
them. And so like when you see that it's cool, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one good
I
thing.
mean, even
Mentality
RBG, I
wise,
think, took a map off of Movie Star Riders. They
yeah,
obviously
exactly.
struggled from there on out, but they didn't have like
Right.
the worst of runs, and again,
I
they
thought
got
they
that
were gonna beat
experience.
Order. I thought they were
Yeah,
the
me too.
favored team against Order. Like I
I,
thought they were
I
the
think they
favorites.
came very close. Am I wrong in saying that? I
Yeah. I think what happened was they got beat on overpass, and I think
yes,
they like
yes,
overpass was what they needed. But anyways, so I think conference adds like a better mentality for these teams because you don't just go over there and get slaughtered, or like at least you shouldn't. Like you should be a lot closer, especially because this last conference that RBG and Extra Salt and all those guys were at. I just want to double check because I don't want to be wrong in what I'm saying, but I think there was some teams in there that were like undoubtedly worse. Like, yeah, RBG going into that event was just undoubtedly better than Renewal and EC Brugge and Wisla Krakow. Like, they were probably legitimately just better. And then, like, you add in like a team like Sharks is not even the fifth best Brazilian team. So if we're competing against Team One and whoever it might be over here now, and we're like not worried, then like those guys aren't better. So when you really looked at the bracket, I mean, Extra Salt looked like a guarantee to go through to Pro League, and then Godsend also was a lock. So it was like, man, two NA-based teams took two of the three spots to go to Pro League
yeah,
over a bunch of teams that you've looked up to or like thought were pretty good. So mentality-wise, that's great. I also think the opportunity to go is way better than just one direct Pro League spot. Like two conference spots is sweet,
yeah,
and that's really cool. I also think that if, like I said, it's going to be two conference spots per season or like every other season or whatever it might be. Plus, the other thing that people are forgetting is like these challenger events, which they needed a better name. I hate that they killed DreamHack, but like the ESL Challenger events, like ESL Challenger Anaheim or whatever,
hmm
those events also offer conference spots. So they all play into each other. And then going to those events, I think drastically helps your ranking. Like, I don't know what RBG's ESL World ranking is. They're 57th in the world in general, but ESL World ranking, CSGO, let's see if I can pull this up real quick. I'm sure like they shot up or got a lot of points from going to conference.
yeah,
Meanwhile, we don't even get points for playing Premier. You know what I mean? Like, my team has no points for Premier the last two seasons, which is like crazy. We took top four, didn't get any points.
I think that's how
So
Bad
like,
News Bears made it into Cologne, was ESL World ranking
yeah,
points as well. So
exactly.
winning all those
Exactly. So,
cash cups, it can't hurt.
right. So like when you when you talk about like those opportunities, it's really cool.
Hmm.
I think adding on to that, one thing that they do need to change is like they need to make it so that you get points for other things in NA. Like it's bad that you don't get anything from Premier. Like I just checked and Choco Check this season of Premier took second place. And the only other player on their team that has any points outside of this season of Premier was George. He had 2.5 points for Intel Extreme Masters Fall,
Yeah.
1 point for DreamHack Open, but every player on their team got 4.5 points. And now Choco Check is ranked 43rd in the world, which is above Skade, which is above Renegade, which is above Havu, which is above Team One, above Double Pony, above Order, above RBG, above MIBR. Like they just shot up from one season of Premier, and
And
I have
it's
never gotten points from Premier ever
yeah.
in my entire career. Like, how is that fair? Like, I took top four, I took top six. Like, I never got points ever.
Right.
That's one thing that they need to fix. But I think conference in general is a better opportunity. We just need to like integrate their world ranking and everything a little bit better because I think it's absolute bullshit that like these Australian teams they get points for every event they play because all of their top teams are playing all of their events. All
Hmm.
of our top teams are getting opportunities to go to Europe, so then they're gone. So that's kind of what screws us over. So if they fix that, then I think conference will be great. Because I don't know if you know this, but there's also 2 slots at conference every season for world ranking.
Okay.
So like there's a bunch of invites for all these different things, but then every season of conference has direct
Oh,
slots based on your world ranking.
yeah.
So does Pro League directly, actually. That's how Gambit goes. Gambit isn't a partner team.
Yeah.
So, that stuff all needs to be fixed a little bit better, but for the most part, I think conference is a huge step in the right direction. I think it helps us a lot, actually, way more opportunity than before.
Yeah. I mean, I agree there. I think it's a very exciting thing, and I think the one point that you mentioned that is like that shouts out to me is like you had said. Once you do make it into pro league, how valuable is that experience? Because once you go, you get 5 officials versus the best teams in the world. You don't get a chance to break into Europe tier 2 other than if you wanted to try a Snow Sweet Snow or
Right.
whatever one of those cups and try and get yourself introduced in that scene. But getting a chance, and obviously, I think that we've seen it with Extra Salt. I think they came in second place. They lost to a Static in one of those Snow Sweet Snows, but
Yeah.
Static's on the rise. They're one team that is very excited. They've got an NA player themselves, so I guess he's kind of Swedish
Yeah.
and Wolfie. So once he made it into Europe, he had resounding success. And in North America, he I think finished top 3 at best in Secret Club and like season
Yeah.
35
Something
or
like that.
season 36. So I mean, he's having so much success in a tier 2 team, being that he wasn't even like one of the best oppers in North America at the
Right.
time. So,
Like
but
you might not have even put him like top five
right,
at one
yeah,
point. Like there was genuinely better players than him. So I do have to say one other thing about conference that I forgot to leave out or that
mhm.
I left out by accident is that I don't know if this has been leaked to you, but the future ones are supposed to be lands.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
probably
Okay.
imagine
Yeah.
that like in a
Yeah.
similar
Yeah.
sense to like what
So
Global Challenge was at one point.
exactly. So it's like that's really good experience,
Yeah,
So
100%. Yeah, the very exciting. Again, it leaves a lot to be excited about, and I think that we're seeing the benefits of some of that excitement in some of the new teams that are kind of trying to get themselves introduced into North American Counter Strike. But before I get into roster moves too much, and that'll be how we kind of finish things off, I want to talk
sure.
about what you expect from this next year. Not from yourself, but like as the scene in general, because I think in 2021 and like 2020, we only had really Grim move up into that tier 1 space. Obviously, a junior for a short stint with Furia, but other than that, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for move ups. Now we're seeing potential for that and potential for even a whole team to move up into that tier 1 space with complexity. But what do you expect from this next year in terms of the ecosystem?
I think that we will see not just like being a North American fan. I genuinely think we'll see like a guy like Osee probably make the top 20
Hmm.
of like I actually think he can literally be a top 20 player this year. Um I think you're gonna see a resurgence when EG puts together whatever they're putting together. Well, like you said, we'll talk about that in a bit. So I think you'll see like at bare minimum 2, if not 3, quote unquote tier 1 teams from North America this year by the end of the year. I think you will see more Brazilian teams come to NA. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw Australian team come here again. I actually heard that was like rumored to happen like a while back. It didn't end up coming to fruition, but
Hmm.
I think you'll see more teams come to NA. I think you will see another league in NA. I genuinely think if it's not Gamers Club, it'll be Flashpoint. Like they got to do something. I don't think Flashpoint can be dead. Like they have millions of dollars wrapped up into this. Like
Right.
they must be trying to figure something out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just hopeful. But I think you'll see another league. I think you'll see a player or two who weren't tier one maybe jump into that tier one argument, if not like top 20 players, like I mentioned.
Hmm.
And I just think you'll see a way better year from NA. I could be just hopeful, but I honestly think we could see Liquid like top five again. I think Elige, Naf, and Osee as a trio is quite literally the strongest trio that they've had in the last year or two. Like even when Twist was on the team, he's a great player, but like those three weren't all at their peak, and OC doesn't take from Elysian Naf. Like
Hmm.
that's the thing about Liquid that's really interesting is like Twist, you could make an argument that he took from Elysian Naf, but like OC is not going to take from him because he plays an entirely different role and that role has been filled by a struggling player for 5 years straight,
Yeah.
basically.
I don't think they've really ever had
Since
a
JDM's
amazing
prime. No,
opper.
JDM's prime, he was really good. People forget
Hmm.
that, but JDM rocked like a 1.15 for a year straight. So like he was rocking for a while. But outside
Yeah.
of that, they haven't had a strong opera in a really long time. So, I think NA is gonna see some really big things. So I think we're gonna do a lot better this year.
Yeah, that's one of the most exciting things. I guess now that's a perfect segue, obviously, into some of the roster moves that I want to talk about.
Sure.
Obviously, we can kick things off with what's officially announced because,
Yeah.
everything else is somewhat speculation. But OC moving in to tier one is the first one we've seen in a while, and you obviously set some very high expectations for him. I have similar expectations. I think that this was the best possible pickup. I think that other people in the space think that bring back a Kenny S into this roster or something along those lines is a good idea as well. I can't really argue with that. It's not that bad of an idea. But OC has been destroying in tier two for so long that
Hmm.
it has to be now that he gets his opportunity to step into this team. And again, like we had mentioned, you mentioned JDM. I think barring him, Simple was the only other good opera that they had, and that was for
Right.
such a short amount of time. Now with
I
a
don't
good
even think about him
opper,
because that was just
yeah, that
that
was
that
a
was
tournament or
literally
two.
that was literally just blue balls. Like that wasn't even
Yeah.
fun.
Oh
So
my god,
yes.
what could have been, man?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think OC is perfect for them. I think like one thing that's interesting is Slight on my team. He's always asking like who he should watch, and like
Yeah.
OC was actually a guy that had told me he should watch because if you watch OC, he does have incredible mechanics. Like his raw aim is incredible, but he doesn't really use it to his advantage as much as he maybe could. Like he could be a little bit more of like that dude.
Yeah.
Like I really think that. But at the same time, like he does things around the team and around the team's need, and he gets set up and whatnot. But like, he's just one of those guys. He's like a miracle worker. You just put him dice on overpass, and he's getting a 4K.
Yeah.
You put him in a good spot, and he's just gonna do his job, and he's gonna do it very well and consistently. And I don't think he gets. I don't think nerves really get to him as much as like maybe some other younger players. So I think he's the perfect move. I actually people would call me crazy, but like during the peak of United, like I think there was a period where like Cooper had like a 1.2 on HLTV for like 3 months straight. I literally thought when Cooper was popping off, like they should have gotten Cooper back then. I probably sounds crazy now, but like I think Liquid should have made a change like this like years ago. Like there were like Junior going to Furia, like Furia, that's one thing I respect about them. They got some balls. Like
Yeah.
Liquid probably should have been making that move. Like I don't
Hmm.
think Furia needed to. Like Furia had a plethora of Brazilian players they could have looked at. They're like, let's take this young talent. And I just think that's something that NA teams have not done in our history. Like you look at some of the top talents, they were all like given a shot finally. Like Stewie was given a shot out at random basically. Elige was giving a shot. Like I remember watching matchmaking back in like 2014, back when matchmaking was good. And before Elige was actually a pro player, I used to watch like Tarek and like all the netcode guys like
Yeah.
stream matchmaking, and Elise would be on the other team and they'd be like, this fucking kid just stream snipes us. Like they thought he was like a stream sniper, and then he turns out to be like this protege. So
Mm.
I think North American teams don't give enough shots to younger talent, and that's actually I think what maybe kind of keeps some of these guys in the dark. But OC should have had this shot a year ago, and I
Yeah.
think it's awesome that he has it now. I think it's the perfect move.
I'm right there with you. And again, you kind of like talk about people that have had their shots. Grim. He had limited success. I think obviously that was a big role clash, and I think that's kind of
Yeah.
what everyone chalks it up to because before that, very gifted in the star role, and hopefully he does get his chance to shine. I think that this potential new team will be great for him. But I mean, I'll go back to the Wolfie example because this is something that I've been really kicking home is that team has kind of risen up the rankings since he's been introduced into the roster. He's brought them to a whole new level, and again, he was a player that hadn't been playing in tier one Counter Strike ever in North America. He's not like a massive move, but with the addition of him, Bird from Sky obviously has been very good on that team as well recently to kind of attribute it more to their success. But having him as an opper and bringing him in has brought them from that tier kind of 3 tier 2 ish to more closer to that tier 1.5 and potentially like to do a whole lot in that roster. So I think that
Yeah.
anytime you get a player that's just so consistently good in tier 2 and he doesn't get a chance, it kind of hurts. But now that we're finally seeing opportunities for these players, it's a big deal. And I guess that can kind of bring us into complexity as well and the potential for them to sign the core of Extra Salt. They're actually, I was surprised to see this. No more Marky in this rumor. It's Fang Jr.,
Yeah.
Grim, Floppy, and JT. What do you think about that roster?
So first of all, I think it's really important for our scene that we're taking a team that has just been farming Premier and whatever they play for so long, and we're putting them into guaranteed ESL partner spot,
Yeah,
guaranteed Blast Premier partner spot. Like that's the big thing, right? Like these guys are just not going to be in North America. Like we're not going to see them for 9 months of the year
yeah,
because they're going to be in Europe, and that's really good because then somebody else has to rise up. Somebody has to.
yeah.
So I think that's really big. I think it's great, and I think those are resources that we had from Cloud9, we had from Complexity, we had from 100 Thieves, all these orgs that just would not invest. Like it's so big. So I think it's a step in the right direction. It's going to make other teams like, hey, Cloud9's like, maybe we could sign one of these teams, whatever.
Hmm.
But I think that's important. I think the roster. Hope I don't get too much hate for this because me and Fang already went on it on Twitter a little bit, but like not because of any of our like beef or whatever or anything that I think about him as a player, strictly roles. I think that rumored roster is making a mistake by keeping Fang and dropping Marky. And if you look at it on paper, like stats, like I don't even know what the difference is. Like I haven't looked, but like Fang obviously won an MVP in Europe and he has good stats. Um, Markey's stats are right there with him, but the difference is you got a guy in Markey who plays like mid on Vertigo. He plays like bitch roles in general. Like
Hmm.
he plays the lesser roles and he gets good stats doing so. And he's an entry fragger like fearlessly. And then you have Fang who needs to, or not needs to be, but is set up more often, does get a little bit more freedom, plays some of these more important roles, and then you slap Grim in there, and theoretically,
He'll be the
Grim should be
star
taking
above
all of his
Fang.
spots. Right, like Grim should take his spots. Like,
Yeah.
like if they played Mirage, like Fang would not be Con anymore, it'd be Grim.
Hmm.
Like if and then that's the other topic too, is like you gotta remember if you look at the way their team's built, JT doesn't play their bitch roles. Like actually Floppy plays a lot of like anchor spots
Yeah.
and Marky plays a lot of anchor spots, and JT and Fang get to play the rotator spots, like the fun spots. So then if you bring in Grim and you keep Fang, that means you could put both of those guys in rotator spots, but now JT has to take a back seat. And is JT going to be the same JT? Is he going to be the same comfort? I know personally as an in-game leader, when we brought in Brett on Mirage was one of our best maps, and um, before we got Brett, and Austin was our Dedier player, and I was the Cat player. And when we brought in Brett was not going to be a Dedier player. That's just not his play style.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would be fit, so I said I'll go play Dedier and I'll let you play Cat. And our Mirage regressed, honestly. And it wasn't like it's his fault or anything, or like my fault today. It was more so like as an in-game leader, the reason we play those positions is because we get so much information and we can feed so much information and we can take risks as lesser
Firepower
fun like
pieces.
firepower pieces, and those risks are better payoff because like if me or JT go die in some round It's not the same as if like Floppy or whoever they have, whoever I
Right.
have, we want those guys to be alive in the late rounds more frequently. So you want guys like us to be taking more of those risks and being in
Hmm.
those spots. So now you have Grim and Fang who would theoretically be taking both. And if you go the opposite route and you say like, okay, Grim, you're gonna stay in your same playstyle from Liquid, then you're just a moron because like that's why they didn't work was because Liquid brought in this stud player, made him play shit spots, and was like, "Why is this kid making mistakes? Like that's the dumbest thing you could possibly do." I'll grill him all day about it, but it's like
Right.
the dumbest thing you could do. So now you have this complexity roster where you lost an integral role player and you replaced it with a stud. So now you just have like too many studs,
Yeah.
And I think that's where you could see an issue. Now, I'm not saying it won't work. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like those guys aren't all great players and like they can't figure it out. I'm just saying it's gonna be a barrier, but nonetheless, it's a good opportunity for them to be with complexity, no matter what the roster is. I just think Marquis the better piece, and
Hmm.
that's not fueled by anything other than just like looking at Counter-Strike and how the game's played. Like we want to talk about Counter-Strike being a role-less game, but the second you take certain pieces out of certain teams, you see them crumble. It's
Hmm.
not it's a no-brainer in some aspects. So
No, no, I'm right there with you. I think it puts a lot more pressure on Floppy what he can do as a role player because that is a lot of pieces to set up, and
yeah,
Fang I think can kind of be a very effective opener as well. But I get what you're
yeah,
saying. Marky does a lot for that team, and like specifically on like one of their best maps in Nuke, he's unbelievable with what he can do, and like Squeaky, just such
yeah.
an incredible player.
Well,
And
that's the one thing about Markey isn't necessarily like a traditional entry fragger, and Fang's not like a traditional like star role player. They kind of do certain things that are like
Mhm,
their comfort. Like you'll see Fang works banana on Inferno. Usually that's what you do with an aggressive rifler.
right,
And then Markey goes halls. Well, if you like look at my team, me and Saturn work B on Inferno, and Joel's goes halls, and Joel's is outright our best rifler on the team. And you think like, oh, you're limiting him, but it's like a comfort thing. So
yeah,
like, I don't think that Fang is like bad in any way, and I think like his playstyle is great. I just think that Grim's gonna want to do the same things as him.
yeah.
So then if you go and put Fang in Marky's spots, is he gonna have the same impact? And if it goes down tremendously,
Hmm.
are they still that good of a team? That's kind of the big question mark because obviously you can switch roles and you can make it work. I just don't know to what level. So
No,
that's
no,
kind of where
I
my
see what
question
you're
mark
saying.
is.
You pretty much have
Yeah.
like a one for one replacement and just bringing Marky over and successfully filling that roles, whereas Fang, as good a player as he is, will have to adjust into those roles,
Right.
and that could be a question
Not
mark
to
for the
mention you're
roster.
losing Osee and getting Junior, and people like to look at that as like a paper to paper, like one for one. And the
Yeah.
truth is their play styles are kind of different. Like
Okay.
they don't, like I don't think like it's going to be as smooth of a transition. But I think it's a great opportunity for them to be under complexity if it comes to fruition. So
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think now we can transition. We talked a little bit about us. We talked a little bit about complexity. I think the last thing on my mind that I really want to talk about is EG and what their roster could potentially be. I think that this has less to do with like the tier two ecosystem and more to do with like strictly rumors right now because all that's been announced is a coach and Malik, and then you have Breeze and Cirque still staying on the roster. I imagine that Stu 2K is going to be announced here shortly
sure.
as well. There's no questions about that. And so potentially it leaves, I think, what has currently been rumored as Rush and
Rush and
Automatic
automatic, yeah.
joining up with that. What do you think that roster can do potentially?
Well, I'll be honest, the roles are perfect. Like the only overlap I really see is like Stewie and like maybe Breeze, just because like in the past when you look at like the historical Cloud9 team, it was Rush, Automatic, Stewie, Tarek, and then Skadoodle, right?
Hmm.
So Skadoodle and Cirque, I mean, there's drastic differences in play style, but they're the oppers. And then Rush is Rush. Automatic's gonna be Automatic. But is Breeze gonna be like more like a Tarek? Is Stewie gonna take a back seat for once? Because like I don't know anything about Stu. I've never spoken to him in my entire life, but like the guy doesn't seem willing to take a back seat. He seems
Yeah.
like he's been trying to force the same style for years, whether it's worked or not. And I think that could be the problem because like a lot of people seem to forget like Tarek was the IGL of that major winning team. It wasn't Stewie, even though Stewie was IG Young for a long time. Like Tarek was the guy that got them over the hump. So like I think it's cool. I think they're good on paper. I think Rush is an incredible role player that deserves way more love than he's ever gotten in his career.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I also played with the guy in FPL a couple times, and he is a fantastic communicator. Like, I don't think I've played with like he was honestly probably one of the best people I've ever played with FPL with in my entire life in terms of like his personality and the vibes. Like, he's got to be an integral piece to a team like that. I guess it just comes down to, is Cirque going to get back to his level?
Yeah.
What level are we going to see from Automatic? What level are we going to see from Stewie as like the IGL entry fragger? Like, is that going to be his kind of thing still? He's going to be that aggressive IGL? I don't know. So that's cool. I'm really excited to have that team back, but I
Yeah,
don't know
I mean, say we
who
get
they're
Cirque and Breeze at like kind of a form that we had seen before the COVID era. I mean, what do you think can be like a potential for this roster if, like, say they get that motivation back that it seems like they've very, very much lost?
I think like I think Cirque. It was rumored at one point that Cirque was just going straight back to Bulgaria and like gonna join a
Yeah.
Bulgarian team. Like, that's what I had heard. And now all of a sudden he's like right back in the focal point of this team. I don't think for Cirque it was so much like he was sick of NA. Like, he seems like the type of guy that like he kind of likes being in North America, and like also they spend a lot of time in Europe. Like, he doesn't seem like homesick. He's been over here for years now.
Yeah.
I think his motivation was lost because it just fucking sucked. Like, they just sucked and nothing was changing.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he didn't like the way that he had to play, or like his freedom level or whatever it might have been. He didn't like it. I think when you get a Cirque that's motivated, I mean, how old is this guy? I feel like when he was first picked up, he was like young as shit. But I feel like he's probably like what, like 23 now, or
Let me
he's
see here.
22.
22.
He's 22, so
Wow.
he's not like he's like still young as
Yeah.
shit, you know. So like, I think he's still got like a bright future, and I think Breeze as well. I think Breeze is like
Breeze is
22 or
probably 22 or
23.
23. Yeah.
Yeah, he's 23. I think he's still young. Like I don't think that these guys are like they lost it. I
Yeah.
just think that sometimes when you really hate your situation, you're not as motivated. You're not as locked in. And when you bring in guys like Automatic and Rush, who everybody knows are just like, if you want to model yourself as a human being after two CS pros, it's Automatic and Rush. Like, these guys are like just stand up people,
And Stewie's got to
stand up
bring a lot of
players.
motivation, I'd have to imagine, as
Exactly,
well.
exactly. And I think if Stewie, like, there's always been, I mean, you can literally watch the face cams. Like, Stewie's raging at Liquid like half the time they're playing in recent time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how much of that is just like built up frustration from the last 4 years? You know, like, is it really Stewie? Is that just like he's just sick of it? So like, if you have a confident, happy, non-raging, whatever you want to call it, Stewie,
Mm-hmm.
now you're talking about a team that could really, I mean, sky's the limit. So yeah, I think it's really awesome. I'm really interested to see what Extra Salt ends up doing as an organization, because I don't know what rumors you've heard or anything, but like, I heard that Malbs was maybe looking to be like out of Team One.
Yeah.
Um, and I was thinking like Extra Salt as an organization built themselves on the back of a tier two team that they kind of built up, and they're not gonna. I mean, there's no other option for them to go out and buy like a bigger team.
Mm-hmm.
So it would make way too much sense to keep this marquee guy that you have contracted and sign some NA players
Yeah.
and make a little rumble on the scene. And like, because like I was telling you earlier, like when I look at Premier, like I don't actually look at like any team that's, oh, I forgot about Pain. No, I didn't forget about Pain. They don't have safe. But anyways, I don't see any teams in NA Premier right now who are like, holy shit, like those are the guys.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if Extra Salt just decided they're gonna go buy some free agents, they could make another NA Premier super team with like available free agents. And I think if you had like Marky and Melbs at the front, like, I mean,
Got a
come
little bit
on.
of the bag as well with the Osee
Yeah,
sale
you
and
gotta, you had to have made some
complexity.
money on OC.
Yeah.
So like, and then selling them to, yeah, exactly. And then selling to Complexity. So like, they've
And then
got
if you
money.
pick up Mouths, that's another bag potential. If you
I
maybe
mean,
work
dude,
with
Malbs is
teams.
basically Grim Jr. Like, I think something. Maybe I'm going crazy, but like back in the day when Grim was carrying the shit out of Triumph, people forget it was Grim and Jr. Like, as a duo, they were carrying that team.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that Malbs has carried Team One in the last year, like, I literally think at one point this guy was rocking like a 1.2, and not a single player on his team had a 1.0. Like, literally,
As a
like he
rifler as
was.
well.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Even like last 3 months doesn't mean that much because they haven't played so much. But like,
Mm-hmm.
Malbs is a 1.15. His next best is a 1.02. Like,
Yeah.
this guy was carrying Team One,
Mm-hmm.
and so like, who's to say that that guy isn't going to be able to, like, I think Malbs was ready for like Furia. Like, I thought
Yeah.
I thought Furia should just buy this kid. Like, get rid of that drop guy and just buy Malbs, and you have a sick roster. Like, but anyways, I'm curious to see what Extra Salt's gonna do if more organizations want to invest down in it. It's kind of opening the floodgates, so it's really cool.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I guess I have one last question about the rosters,
Sure.
and that's complexity. I think there's a lot of pressure put on that organization as a whole, and I think that this roster, people will say, doesn't live up to that. I will argue both sides. I think that necessarily this isn't as good as past rosters, but also the past rosters that were supposed to be very good. With the Configs and Blame Fs, they didn't have success like they had hoped for, and they
Mhm.
weren't having any better results. So, do you think that this roster is going to live up to the complexity name? Do you think it's fair to go for a roster like this?
I feel like sometimes organizations and the people running them and like the figures at the front can sometimes talk up who they are and what they're known for way more than um reality shows. And what I mean by that is like this complexity organization, and I have so much respect for Jason Lake and everything he's done and all the teams they've had. But like to be quite frank, they have one singular trophy
Yeah.
like in history. So like we're talking about, or actually sorry, let me make sure that I didn't lie, because I think this covers when they were old complexity, not just the rebrand on HLTV. I guess I don't know how to check, but yeah, I'm pretty sure like complexity as an organization throughout the history of time. I hope this like is all time. Yeah, this is all time HLTV. They have one singular trophy ever. Like, and it was Blast Premier Spring 2020 Europe Finals. And they made it to a few majors, right? Like they made group stage of IM Katowice 2019. They made the quarterfinal in 2018. They made a quarterfinal in 2014, like way before then.
Hmm.
But like, I sometimes think that this complexity name is more of like this, like delusional optimism from Jason Lake than
Yeah.
it is reality. I don't think complexity is
As
like
prestigious.
right. And I think that sometimes it's unfair pressure that like Jason or the fans put on these players. But I think if there is like if there was one group that you're gonna give this opportunity, I think these guys have it. I think Grim went through the burner on Liquid.
Hmm.
He didn't get to do what he can do. He's hungry to prove that. You have Junior, he was thrown into Furia again, another guy didn't get to do what he wanted to do. Like I coached a Junior in Premier like a while back on Recon 5. I'll tell you one thing, when I tried to tell him to play a certain way because that was like textbook Counter-Strike or better for the team, he wanted to play his way. Like he always fought me on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to recognize is like some players who have a certain play style and a way that they want to approach the game can't hold those guys back. And I think when you look at this team, you have JT. He is like a phenomenal IGL. I don't think I've ever heard a bad thing about him. Everybody loves the guy. I think as a person, he's a great guy. I've never heard him say anything bad to anybody. Like, um, I think you have Floppy mentally. Floppy thinks he's the best player in NA. Mentally, Floppy thinks that he's like next up. I mean, you
Yeah.
you have Fang. Fang truly believes like he's going to be a top 20 player. Fang truly believes that he can be one of the best players in the world. You couldn't ask for five better players with like better mental capacity to do this.
Hmm.
And I don't see one player on that team who's like remotely a rager. Like you have a perfect mix. Despite what I said about like roles and like the back end of Counter Strike, I don't think you could have a better five players ready for an opportunity like this. And so I think that they will. I think they will live up to the expectations of what they believe they can do.
Okay.
That's how I'll say it, because I don't think like these outside views, Jason Lake saying, like if you guys don't perform, you guys are out or whatever, all the bullshit there. I don't think any of that matters. It's all white noise at the end of the day. Like I think if they believe they could be a top 20 team within the next year, if they because I mean they already basically are with like Osee and everything.
Right.
If they believe that they can make the major and they just do those things, like if they end this year having made the major, doing well at Pro League, making out of groups, whatever the case might be, I don't think those guys are going to be like dropping their head, and I think they can really do it. So I think they'll live up to what they think they can do. And that's really all there is to it. But
Yeah. No, I agree, and I don't think it's a bad shout that you Complexity isn't a team necessarily that has had resounding success other than that one blast, I think, spring final
Yeah.
that they were able to take. So yeah, I'm right there with you, and I think that roster has a lot of potential, like you said. I personally, despite what you think about Fang, I'm a big fan of him individually. I like the mantra that he has carried himself with, and in the rise of him individually. But again,
Yeah.
I understand the Markey situation, and for sure, I definitely get the
I just think
roles.
it's a role clash is really the biggest thing. Like
Right.
outside of the roles, I'm sure the guy works hard,
Yeah.
right? So like if you work hard, you can do whatever you want to do,
Hmm.
you know? Like if you need to change roles, you can change roles. I'm white noise. I should be white noise,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure. I'm
And
right there
like
with you.
and vice versa. So yeah, I think they definitely have a bright future.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's all the questions I have for you.
Oh,
Anything you want to shout out before we head out?
shout out to Strife. They've been a great organization. Shout out to you. You're a great cast. Everybody should follow you and listen to your cast. And other than that, I mean, I appreciate you having me on here. It was fun.
Yeah, no,
I love
thank you
talking
so
about
much.
CS.
This is awesome. This is exactly what I'd hoped for the first episode of Fireside Chats. With all that being said, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the video if you enjoyed it and want to see more. And yeah, looking forward to our chats in the future.
Awesome. All right, you have a great night.